Welcome back to part 5 of our Sabbath series. Here we are in the beautiful creation, what God has given us right here on the intercoastal in our own backyard. And today I want to talk about Sabbath and Creation. As you've been probably following along in the book, this is part 3 in the book. And I want to just talk a little bit about what that means. You know, we generally don't think about Sabbath as creation, because a lot of what we're focused on is rest, recreation. We think of the great Jubilee, the 70 years, and then you rest and you take a year off. But a lot of what we do, a lot of what Jesus or what God instilled into the Sabbath law was built around giving the land rest. Because we have to back up. You know, we did this at the very beginning. We talked about how God created and then He rested on the seventh day. But really what we see pop up is in the time of the ancient Israelites, they would work the land and then they would take the 7th year off. It was the Jubilee year, and then every seven years, so every 49 years, they would take a year off and everybody would be released. And it's kind of practical. I don't know about you, but I used to farm for fun, not for a living. And I actually found myself up just the other day up in South Georgia again, the beauty of being back in this part of the world. And I was helping my friend cattle farm, which is something I like to do just to clear my mind, just to go out and think and be out in creation just like this. And I was reminded as I was listening to him talk about his hay fields, because there's actually a pretty severe drought in South Georgia right now, how he plants his hay fields in such a way to give the land rest. Because if he plants everything all the time, the land would give out and he wouldn't produce enough to keep his cows alive. And because he has done that, and so many farmers in the area have done that, even with this drought, they're actually managing to produce sustenance for their livestock. And it's all in this rhythm of figuring out how to let the land rest. You see, when we grind and we grind and we grind, and we think we have more to produce or more to do, the worse it is for us, because we realize that, or what we don't realize is that the land gives out. That God knew from the very beginning when He gave us dominion over the creation, dominion over the land, over the animals and the beasts of the field, as we hear in Genesis, that we have a responsibility to keep the land. And part of that responsibility is finding rest. It's giving it a chance to rest. Thinking about this waterway right here. Thinking about, how does my life impact this waterway? How does my consumption, how does my grinding over and over again affect this beauty that we live in? How is all of that impacted? Because we are at the crux and at the middle of it. And when we think about Sabbath, we find times and we look for rhythms. And we live into those rhythms as we get connected back to God and back to those natural rhythms where we care for the gifts that God's given us. We exercise our dominion and power. Sometimes I think we forget that when we reconnect with God, yes, our lives are fulfilled, as we've talked about in previous segments, but the world around us is affected. In the early church, they used to talk about creation and the divine energy that exists in this wood, in this ground, because when God touched, God's divine imprint was left in the world. And part of our job is looking for God in the divine energy around us. So when you think about that, you're not just thinking about people, you're thinking about every aspect of creation. Because either we believe God created it all or not. If all we think God created was you and me, then what's this? Is this just a trash can we get to rustle around in? Is it a piece of art that we're supposed to stare at? Or is it part of the creation that interacts with us and we with it? Is this what we have dominion over? This is a great question we have to wrestle with, because in the modern construct of Christianity, sometimes we only think about God and creation as it relates to human beings and things with quote-unquote souls. Well, for the early church, this had divine energy. Is that a soul? Who knows? They didn't really get into the semantics of it. But they knew God created this tree. God created this sand. God created this water. God created you and me. And as we think about resting and we think about getting new rhythms in our life centered on God, part of what we're going to come back to is remembering that we have a responsibility to all of it. That these waves crashing on this beach right now is a reminder of the beauty of God in creation. I mean, do you need to see more to know that God's present in the world around us? When's the last time we stopped to admire that? When's the last time we looked out in our yards and didn't worry about how our yard looked compared to somebody else's, but how can I bring butterflies and bees and new life to my yard? That's part of Sabbath. That's part of reconnecting to God, is taking responsibility for what's ours and remembering that God gives us the strength and the courage to do it. So this isn't, Sabbath and Creation isn't some Greenpeace talk. It's not, I'm not telling you to go hug trees and chain yourself to a tree so it doesn't get cut down. What I'm saying is that if we throw creation out the window, then what do we have? What do we have left? What's there? We just took 5 days of creation and chunked it out the window. And I don't think that's what we're meant to do. And part of finding that rest and recreation is remembering that. It's remembering our responsibility. It's remembering holding the land. It's just like the farmers up in Southwest Georgia are doing right now, moving their product, moving their cultivation, moving their planting around so that the land has rest. It's the same as the ancient Israelites who were told, plant, work on 6 days, rest on the seventh, work 6 years or 7 years, rest. Let the land rest. And then the Jubilee year, release all your slaves, give back any property. Could you imagine this? Just think about this for a minute. Give back any land you bought in the last 49 years. How many of you want to give back land after you bought it to somebody? Just think about that. It's kind of ridiculous, but probably what God calls us to in the context of the world is a little bit ridiculous. Taking time to rest and reconnect with God in a world that tells us we have to consume and go more is ridiculous. But I'm going to assure you that ridiculousness is what brings us life. It's what keeps us centered. It's what keeps us focused on the kingdom. It's what keeps us moving in the way that God calls us to. So my hope really is you think about creation, and Swoboda has a lot to talk about. I mean, he gets into pollution, he gets into creation care, he gets into all of it. And some of it's going to tick you off probably, and some of it's going to challenge you, and some of it you're going to be like, that's obvious. But we have a responsibility. We impact the world. We impact the creation. These animals and these birds depend upon us to make good decisions for the creation. God knew that from the very beginning when he told Adam and Eve, this garden is yours. Till it. Take care of it. And when he sends them out, he doesn't let them go and die. He comes with them and they till the earth. That dominion and that power that they were given by God is still there. So as you and I live into the world, and as we practice Sabbath, as we set those rhythms, remember that those rhythms are going to impact this reality. They're going to impact this waterway. They're going to impact this beach, these trees, this beautiful world. We impact that. We have since the very, very beginning. And we have to remember that. And part of reconnecting with God is remembering our place in the creation and the power that we have. So that I was hoping a hermit crab was going to crawl on me. So that this hermit crab, we remember that we have them. They're ours. They're dependent upon me just as much as this spider over here. This is the world in which we live. And we have that power. So as we rest and recreate, as we set our Sabbath rhythm, remember creation. Remember when we don't rest, what toll we take on the creation around us. When we are just obsessed with consuming and running that race to nowhere that I've spoken about before, and we don't find that rest, remember what we're doing. Remember how we're impacting the environment. We have to find that balance. And it starts small, with a few of us connecting with Sabbath and others following suit and learning from us. So my brothers and sisters, think about Sabbath and creation. Wrestle with it. Push back. Adopt new practices. Look at your yard differently. Look at the world around you differently. Think about the decisions you make and how they affect the world. Are we going to be perfect? No. But we can try. Until next time, guys, we'll get out in the world. Enjoy it. And I'll see you next time for Sabbath and worship.